You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. There are a lot of photography organizations for professional and amateur photographers, and there's an alphabet soup worth of acronyms to choose from when trying to figure out which group is best for you. We have the PPA, APA, AOP, NPPA, LSMFT, and then there's the acronym we're going to talk about today, the ASMP, also known as the American Society of Media Photographers. Now, these groups are not mutually exclusive, but ASMP has been around for 75 years. It's a leading trade organization with 38 chapters around the country. Their core mission is to advocate, educate, and provide community for image makers, fostering thriving careers, a strong sense of professional ethics, and an unshakable belief in the power of images. ASMP has many branches on their tree, and we welcome two photographers affiliated with ASMP to talk about their membership, advocacy, and about some of the new initiatives they've launched to include more image makers. First up is Liam Alexander. Liam is the New York chapter president of the American Society of Media Photographers. Liam is also a fine art photographer and creative director whose work is focused on community building projects such as I Thou at the NYU Kimmel Gallery and the Exchange at Rush Arts. His images have been published in Nylon and Rolling Stone. His clients include Wix.com, Samsung, and Renaissance Hotels. We also welcome to the show Harper Bella. Harper's photographic work explores the different realities of Afro-descendants living in the United States. Harper was born in New York, raised in Trinidad and Tobago. She's the recipient of a 2021 Decentralization Grant, and her work has been featured in Rockefeller Center, the Museum of Contemporary Arts in Long Island, and Miami Art Week. We first became aware of Harper's curatorial work when she co-curated the wonderful group exhibit Uncovering the Laws of Perseverance, which was organized by the New York chapter of ASMP, which she is a board member. Welcome to the show, Harper, and welcome, Liam.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to be here.
Excellent. Great having you guys here. Now, assuming the two of you are like the rest of us, we stake our claims as photographers as we head out on that long and winding road of finding work and exhibiting and coming up with projects to work on. And there are many paths, maybe even shortcuts on that road. But what was it that first drew each of you to join the ASMP? And I'll ask, Liam, I'll ask you that first.
Great. Thank you. And wow, what drew me to becoming a member of ASMP? It's funny because I've been an ASMP member for, well over 10 years and a board member for 10 years now. I think this is my 10-year anniversary. And I remember way back when, to be totally honest, I was young and kind of a jerk. And I remember going out to industry events and meeting all these people and thinking to myself, totally honestly, just thinking like, who are all these people? How are they getting money in this industry? And how am I not getting money in this industry? And I met a guy named Frank Rocco, who was one of our former presidents of ASMP. And he said, well, you should join ASMP. And I thought, fine, I'll join ASMP. I'm going to figure this all out. And I was, and it's funny when I look back on that because I really, when I joined ASMP, had no clue about the industry, about how to really navigate. And I certainly knew how to take pictures, which I think anybody that embarks on the journey of becoming a photographer, you've got some talent in taking photographs, or at least the bug has bit you. But I had essentially zero clue about anything else. And I joined ASMP almost as like at the time I didn't realize it, but it was sort of out of desperation, throwing my hands up, like I had no idea what's missing. How come I'm not making money in this industry? Why? And I learned that. I learned actually why I wasn't making money in this industry. But one of the things that I got from joining was I really just had no idea that there was this community of people available to me that I could relate with, I could talk with, and I could learn from and learn with. So I winded up answering my question, but also walking away with inside of a whole new world of community and support that I never would have imagined would have been available to me, and completely changed my point of view on what the industry looked like, because I finally had a place, I finally had a community, finally had people that, like I said, I could learn and grow with.
I mean, did you find that people were welcoming, right away, or is it one of those situations where it took some time to get to know people a little bit, or maybe, like a lot of these things, you kind of get out what you put in. If you're reaching out to people and asking questions, they're there for you. But sometimes my feeling is that you join a group like this or any group, and it just kind of sits there unless you're the person that are making the proactive steps.
Absolutely, John. And the thing is, yes, just like anything in life, you get out what you put in. It's part of the reason why I ended up joining the board, is because I realized that the events that I was attending and the people I was interacting with is making such a difference for me. And I wanted to be a part of making that difference for other people. So you're 100% correct. I mean, you get in what you put out. But I would have to say that photography is a very lonely industry. For the most part, photographers are lone wolves. And I was absolutely surprised at how welcomed I was into this community of people. I'm thinking back over 10 years now, but just I had no clue that there was people that wanted to help me. I thought it was me against the world. And to be totally frank, the world was winning. And
you noticed.
Yeah.
Back in the mid 70s, I was a young photographer starting out, and I also had no idea why some of these people have these really cool studios in Midtown Manhattan. And I'm like trying to figure out where my next assignment's coming from. I joined what was the ASMP, except it was the American Society of Magazine Photographers. And again, to meet people, and it was an organization that was good. There was the Graphic Artists Guild I joined. I started meeting people, mingling with people, and also it gave me a way of establishing fees, which is something that is always going to be a monster, especially starting out. So I had some guidelines and some encouragement. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit further down the line, but I actually took advantage of some of the legal counsel that ASMP offers. I had a client who I did work for, and they were claiming that they owned the photographs physically and everything about them, including the copyright, which was not the case. And I took them before there's an ethics committee that is part of ASMP, and I brought this person up to them. It was especially satisfying because the person was actually one of the board members, which was kind of fun. But it was I won, and this person and I are still good friends. In fact, we had dinner together about 3 years ago before COVID hit. But again, ASMP, like we said early on, has been around for 75 years, and it's always been a very valuable organization for a variety of reasons. It really, really is.
And Harper, maybe we can jump to you. What kind of motivated you to join?
Yeah, so for me, I just remember yearning to be surrounded around like-minded people in the photo industry, specifically people who were established and successful, to be quite honest. And so I was really trying to figure out what my next steps were and where I belonged in the photo industry, because it is such a large pool. And people who are on the outside tend to think, oh, well, you're a photographer, so you take pictures of everything. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. So really finding where I fit in the mix, and then fostering relationships with, more established photographers. I will admit, I really did not really think too much about the financial aspect of it. For me, I really just was looking for a community to help me, and to some degree build my confidence, but and learn from them as much as possible.
you made me think of, when I was starting out myself. And, we do take pictures of a lot of things when we're starting, and we're not really sure, what avenue our photography will take. And I found myself at the beginning bringing my portfolio to travel magazines and then to a museum the next day. And I was all over the place. So something like this, to have people to get that feedback and also to kind of, help you find the path for you is crucial.
A mentoring program of sorts.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Formal or informal. You meet
Exactly.
up with somebody who you click with, who's got some age on you, who you could learn from, and who's willing to share.
Exactly.
That's the biggest thing of all. That's the biggest.
And one of the first people I actually met was Liam. Interestingly enough, actually, he was the first person that I met at a portfolio review at FIT. So yeah, circle of life, I guess.
Sure enough. Well,
Yeah, and I do want to add that so speaking of formal and informal, we do have the informal meetups and things like that, but at ASMP New York, we do have two formal programs designed for exactly this. We have our Brain Trust program that we really encourage every member to get into, where they meet up with a group of photographers. It's intergenerational and interdisciplinary, and they have monthly meetups and exchange ideas. It's one of the places I learned so much. And we also just created last year a formal mentorship program called the Bridge Program in partnership with an organization called BKC. It's actually a partnership with BKC and also Sony and the Freelancers Union and a bunch of other amazing people have sponsored the program. But it's a formal mentorship program for younger photographers that we've created. We really like trying to formalize this aspect of ASMP because we feel like it's the most important thing and the most valuable thing to photographers at any stage of their career.
As Ellen mentioned at the beginning, there are 38 chapters around the country. So, if, let's say you're not in New York and you want to join ASMP, how do you go about it? And maybe just give us a little bit of a breakdown as to how people would join, where they would join. And, my question really that would follow up on that, why wouldn't somebody want to join a chapter that's bigger, for example, in New York or Los Angeles, especially now that we're in mostly doing things remotely?
Well, that's a great question. And just to get the basics out of the way, ASMP-NY.org, that's the general ASMP website that's where anyone can join. And yes, there's 38 chapters across the United States. We highly recommend joining your local chapter because that's where something that I always say, and I think that people try to traverse this process, but really like your career and everything in your life is built with concentric circles generating from you and from where you are. I think some people kind of think like, oh, maybe if I join the New York chapter, if I'm in Missouri, but it's going to somehow skyrocket my career. But your community is where you are. And the resources that you need for success, I would say, are closer than you think to you. You'd be so surprised when you join an organization like ASMP, the people that you meet that are right in your backyard, that especially now during the pandemic when we're so separated, right next door, in the apartment right next door to yours, there could be the person that's going to change your life. But it's just about how do you connect with those people? And ASMP provides that. So we're focused where the industry is. And I know that, unfortunately for the middle of the country, it's like Chicago, New York, LA, Philadelphia. These are the biggest, Miami, Florida to some degree. These are the biggest markets for the photography industry. And that's sort of why that's where all the chapters crop up. But, we welcome, if people want to start chapters in places where there's not a chapter, please reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with the national organization. We want people to have this resource wherever they are. And one other thing that I will add is that as a member of ASMP, you do have the opportunity to be listed in our national Find a Photographer, and ad agencies and people use that all the time. They go to our Find a Photographer. If they say, oh my gosh, we need a photographer in Colorado or in Mississippi, a lot of New York agencies will go and just look at the Find a Photographer in ASMP. I get reached out about that all the time.
And maybe you could then just kind of elaborate a bit on what other, aspects come with membership. I mean, maybe you can mention dues. I don't know if it's different around the country, or what is expected of a member, and also what a member gets in return.
Sure. So the membership dues are, it's very small. It comes to roughly like $20 a month, $20 to $30 a month, depending on your membership level. And different membership levels get you different things. The highest membership level, allows you to vote in national elections and things like that. But mostly, let's talk about what people really care about, right? Like there's discounts, and we do tons of free events for the general public, because we really look at everybody in the photography industry here in New York is an ASMP member, right? We want to make programming for everybody, because we realize that not only are we a resource to our members, but we're also a resource to the community, and the community at large, and people that don't feel like they're a part of the community. We're always trying to look at how can we make more and different programming that younger and more diverse communities are interested in, so that they can find this resource and use it as well. Because there's so many people out there that felt like me and like Harper felt like that we're alone in this, and we want to reach out to those people. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, as a member, you get tons of benefits. And please visit the website to see all of these, because I do not even know the plethora of member benefits, like discounts at Apple, and we get discounts at B&H even, and things like that. And there's tons and tons of those. So membership is just worth it just for that. All the kinds of discounts and things you get. And also, there's a couple of major things. So first of all, if you're a member, you get access to the ASMP Academy, which is a group of online courses and videos that are focused on all kinds of topics, from legal stuff to all kinds of topics. Go online and check it out. And you also get access to our document share. So we talked a little bit about legal stuff and contracts. We have tons of contracts. I mean, I just spoke to a lawyer recently because I needed to redo some contracts and agreements that I use. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. It was thousands of dollars they wanted from me. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go on the ASMP contracts. I can use those contracts because it's free. And so with your membership, you get access to all those, and they've all been updated for 2021. They're all updated for social media. And that's like, so just immediately right there, it's like membership benefits. And then there's also, there's legal clinics. You talked about legal advice. Every single Tuesday, our legal counsel and some other volunteer lawyers make themselves available. You can sign up for essentially whatever you want. You just go talk to them, and it's like talking to a lawyer for free. So those are like the basic, just like on the face of it, like why someone should be a member of ASMP. But then beyond that, like we've been talking about, is the community. The community is really why I stick around. The community is why I joined the board. The community is why really where I got my career from. Because look, the contracts, legal advice, that stuff is great. We need it, but your career is sustained inside of the community that you're a part of.
I noticed that, or I remember when we spoke at the exhibit that we'll speak about in the second half of the show, you were mentioning opening up the criteria, I suppose is the word, to different types of photographers, really image makers at this point. And was that a big deal for ASMP to include, YouTubers, quote unquote, influencers, all these kind of new words that we're hearing? And how has ASMP kind of grown to include more people?
Oh, this is such a great, I'm so glad that you brought that up. And earlier, was it Alan that mentioned when he joined ASMP, it was the Association of Magazine Photographers?
Right.
That's correct, yeah. They had and the year before, it was the Etched in Stone Society. So it was when they went, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that speaks to, look, the times they are changing, right? Like always. The only thing constant in this world is change. And so I fully support, all the changes that are rushing through our association at this moment, because the world and the landscape is changing, right? Like 20, 30 years ago, that was a different world, man. Like, and I talk to tons of members that have been around in the business for a really long time. And even myself, I've been a photographer for like 20 years now. And what the world and the landscape was 20 years ago when I first entered this market, and the way it is now, it's a completely different world. So yes, and the organization in the last 75 years has shifted tremendously, and we're shifting a ton now. I'll tell you, I completely welcome it. I welcome everybody in here because, look, I'm going to be totally straight. Like, there's people on YouTube, there's people on Instagram making more money than people that are just straight photographers. So I think a lot of photographers want to be like, oh, these YouTubers, they're not really, these Instagrammers, but people want to dismiss people like that. And I'm not going to lie when I say that there's been pushback to this. Absolutely. Over the last 10 years that I've been on the board, there's been tons of pushback. I remember when there was pushback about including wedding photographers in ASMP, okay? Like, that's how old I am. But so forget about YouTubers and Instagrammers. But I keep telling people, like, look, these Instagrammers are making more money than you. You want them in this community because you want to learn from them, just like they want to learn from you because you have 30, 40 years of photography experience that they don't have. So I'm into the intergenerationality of learning, and I support that. And I'm, part of what I try to do as the president of ASMP New York is make sure that we're creating that type of programming and that we're creating inclusive programming that includes everybody. And because, frankly, without that, we all suffer if we don't include everybody.
Sure. And I mean, prior and even now, what is the criteria to join? I mean, if at one point, wedding photographer wasn't allowed in, I mean, what would they have had to have shown or to become a member? And same for today. I mean, do you have to have a body of work? Do you have to kind of show your bona fides if you can to join the group?
Anybody who's a photography enthusiast or somebody that is even, if you've got a camera and you're interested to learn, we have the associate membership. Anybody can join ASMP. The reality is like, that's right. Everybody is a photographer now. If you have a cell phone, you've got a camera that's stronger and more powerful than most people's cameras 10 years ago that were professionals. And it's changed the game. It's changed the market. And the trade associations have to change with that as well.
How involved as the president of the New York chapter are you with the national organization, and how separate are the organizations in terms of making their rules, their events, their the criteria for joining, all these kind of factors?
Everything with the criteria for joining and is all done at a national level. As the president of the New York chapter and our board, we are responsible for creating programming for the New York area. So anything that you see going on in New York comes from us. Obviously, there's an alignment with the national organization. And I speak with the CEO of ASMP and our legal counsel all the time. We're to ensure that we're designing programming that's like inside of the mission of ASMP, which is fairly broad, but we have autonomy over the programming that we do here.
I mean, how do you look at what your role is with the organization?
As the New York board, we create all the programming that we do, and it comes from the membership. We take a look at the membership and we talk to people and we say, hey, what do people want? What do people need? What does our community here in New York need? What's needed and wanted here, right? And then from there, we build out the programming that we think is going to make a difference. And yeah, it's on us to get the sponsorship. It's on us to bring in partners, brand partners that are going to support that programming as well. And in some cases, national supports us when we do things that are they support everything that we do. They support it, like a parent supports everything your child does, but the parent doesn't always pay for everything the child does. So it's like but they support us always in everything we do, but financially sometimes it's on us. So we spoke about the Bridge program, also the exhibition Uncovering the Laws of Perseverance, which is how this podcast has come together. These are things that were outside, supported by money from sponsorship from other organizations that help bring these things to life. And they would never come to life without the sponsorship of outside organizations. Because frankly, the Trade Association, we're a nonprofit member-based organization, and we don't have that much money. Our budget is tiny. Frankly, what we do in New York for the budget that we have is extraordinary.
Okay, we're going to be taking a short break. When we come back, we're going to be speaking more with Liam Alexander and Harper Bella. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back with Liam Alexander and Harper Bella, both independent photographers who are also representatives of the New York chapter of the American Society of Media Photographers. Welcome again. So, Harper, tell us how you came to curate a show with ASMP-NY. Did you have a particular angle or venue in mind that you took to them for sponsorship, or did it grow from meeting with ASMP members? What was the background to the show?
Yeah, so prior to 2020, I don't believe many Americans fully considered or fathomed the amount of distress and pain that people of color endured from their daily interactions with the police and how deadly it could be. But it took, drastic measures for individuals to sort of acknowledge this. And so a fellow ASMP New York board member and the head of sponsorship for the New York chapter of ASMP, Joe Lombardo, he was courageous enough to actually express to me that he never fully grasped the severity of the daily oppression people of color confronted, in our country as a white male. So after many vulnerable, long discussions that we had together, he felt inspired to empower me as a Black American woman to create a show that could further the dialogues we shared and bring awareness to the subject matter. In order to deal with creating this exhibition or curating the exhibition, it was important to sort of take a step back and look at what was being portrayed, throughout the media, and social media was actually very instrumental in crafting this exhibition. And so prior to even looking for photographers, myself and the other curator, Gabrielle Vasquez, who I'll talk more about later, we first started to figure out, well, how are people of color feeling? That was where we really started to conjure up, the concept for the exhibition. First was just like, how are we feeling? How are people of color feeling? How are our friends? How are our family members feeling? What are people on social media saying? Because we didn't feel as though the media, right, was kind of, that gave a proper assessment as to what was really happening and how people of color really felt. It sort of just continued to portray this, these acts of violence, which was a part of it, but that was not the whole entire storyline. The first step was figuring that part out. And once we, were able to figure out, okay, well, what are people speaking about? What's on our minds? Then the show was born, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. In seeing the show, it's very clear that the curatorial angle, was about other, quote unquote, other forms of protest, if that's what you want to call it, but really kind of day-to-day living and protest as life. And I found that wonderful. Were you familiar with a lot of the photographers beforehand, or what was your work like as a curator and a researcher in this point?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Some I was familiar with, while others I was not. So we really had an array of photographers that participated in the exhibition. We had, you know, pioneers like, Lou Jones and Chester Higgins and Jamel Shabazz, right? Just to name a few people. So I was familiar with their work. But then, we had emerging photographers and then also just other trailblazers that are doing, incredible work. And we just felt the need to sort of diffuse, right? All of these different sorts of photographers who probably wouldn't most likely be in an exhibition together. Often you see, photographers who's, they've been in the industry for 40 years, either in a solo exhibition or they're with other photographers who have their level of experience. And we felt like this dialogue was one that needed to be had amongst photographers at different levels in their careers.
When you put this show together, now you say you were familiar with the work of some photographers and not familiar with others. You were searching people out. I'm imagining you had a picture in your head of how this show was going to be looking based on what the existing images or photographers. Did it change a lot after you started seeing work from younger people you're not familiar with? Did it change the actual perspective or scope or feel of the show in any way? I had to smile a bit when you said Chester Higgins, because one of my very first jobs out of school was washing and drying prints in the darkroom at Look magazine, and I met him there. He was just starting out, and we used to talk a lot, and he's done pretty well for himself since then. So it was kind of nice hearing that name again. I hadn't thought of it for a while. But anyway, back to my question: Did the show change? The feel or the scope of the show change when you started seeing newer photographers whose work you weren't familiar with?
I wouldn't say it changed necessarily, because we went in with the understanding that we were searching for some form or different methods of healing. So I don't know if it changed or if it just became more, it opened up my imagination as to what this really looks like, right? Because the idea of healing is one that is so subjective, right? It's like, how do you begin to really unravel what does that look like? And it's one that you sort of leave people to kind of have to figure out on their own, right? You see a photo and then you kind of have to unravel that. But yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that it changed. I think that it just allowed me to just see more of, learn from other people and see more of maybe things that I didn't necessarily think of, but then it made sense. Going in.
Are there any photographs in particular that when you saw them, it just made you go, wow, it's just a whole different perspective? Anything stand out in your mind?
Yeah, so we, as we really opened it up, and we felt like this conversation was significant for it to be one that was had on a global scale, right? And I think that that's in itself a kind of audacious for anybody to even think like that. But the media in the US, it impacts so many different people, more than people are aware of. So, I had my friends and calling me from Portugal, asking me, how am I doing? I had, family members from Trinidad telling me what was happening and all the protests that were taking place there. Like, this was something that people of color were all taking in as one together, but just in different places, right? So it was really important for photographers in different places to be able to contribute to the show. So there were two photographers' works that come to mind when you mentioned, someone's work who I didn't quite think of, but when I saw it and the work was presented to me, it made sense. And that's Malik Kibe. He had two photographs in the show. So the first one was Passion of Water, and that was of a Black male, sort of engulfed in it's like he's in water, but the water is red, and it leaves room for so much to be thought about. And then the second image is God of Water, and it's again another a Black male, and he's sort of like levitating over the water, and the water is like purple. And again, it just kind of opens up your mind to just so much. And again, it was imperative to have these photographers work from all over sort of contribute to the conversation. Another photographer that comes to mind is Awuku Darko Samuel, and he's actually based in Ghana. And in his work, some of them, in his pieces, he actually uses recyclable materials. And so there's one image where there's a Black gentleman, with this sort of recyclable container on his head, and he's blowing a kiss. And it just sort of speaks to like Afrofuturism. Like there's so much that goes into that you can sort of, begin to unravel. But I love the fact that it even challenged my idea of what healing could even look like.
Something that you started talking about, which I think begs a lot more discussion, is this idea of healing as protest. And I think one of the things that really resonated with me about this exhibit was that, as you mentioned, through 2020, a lot of people got awakened to some of the realities of our world that people were essentially asleep to. And I think that, as you mentioned, the media really likes to simplify things, oversimplify things, and it's sort of like turned into this idea of like what protest looks like. And what I loved about the exhibit was how through the work you and Gabby curated, and you really brought out this idea of like expanding the view of what protest looks like and what it means. And I was hoping you could actually elaborate a little bit more on like this idea of like healing as protest.
Before I even get into, the idea of healing, I do want to mention, the other co-curator who, I had the opportunity to work with, which is Gabrielle Vasquez. She's a graduate from Parsons, tackling, indigenous politics, and she's a researcher from Brooklyn. In our viewpoint, we believe there was adequate, documentation of the occurrences transpiring at the protests in different cities and other countries, which all sort of displayed acts of violence. So we were really yearning to see, or to see and to find some sort of strategy for people of color to discover ways to not only preserve themselves, but also persevere. Because unfortunately, we do have to move forward, but what does that look like? Hence the title of the exhibition, Uncovering the Laws of Perseverance. So the show sort of symbolizes like a sanctuary for photographers from the BIPOC community to use their work in a way to begin a discussion, with the public and how they're processing, this tumultuous period in history.
If I can add one thing to that, I think that in a culture of violence, I think that healing and art is actually a type of protest to really a culture of violence. And I think that this exhibit exemplified what I love about it, and why it is so beautiful is it really does exemplify that, inside of a culture of violence, that healing and art and creation and beauty is an act of protest.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to mention in regards to healing that I think is important to mention is that, so my sister is a mental health counselor, and so as a result, the word trauma is something I find myself taking into consideration more and more. And so trauma has the capability to produce constant complications in a person's life if it's not taken care of. So while I'm not a professional in the field, I do believe, and I have read, that even after an individual does their best to develop and move forward after their traumatic experience, often these complications can normally stay with us for a lifetime. So I believe it's important to say that this exhibition was an opportunity for us to sort of begin to create strategies of healing, right? But I don't want to undermine the atrocities that took place and say like this is this is the solution. I do know I don't know if there is a solution, to the trauma that people of color experienced in 2020. So the theme sort of dives into people of color like looking into them, looking within, right? And that's where the healing comes from, and uncovering different ways for them to heal, whether it may be through dance or rest or reconnecting with nature or nurturing relationships of sister and brotherhood. We decided to explore a holistic approach with the attempt to deal with the body and the mind, and different ways of liberation can be achieved.
I know, some of the ideas started in conversation with the group or other group members, but what was the jump then to say, okay, let's get these photos up on a wall, let's get sponsorship, and is this something that's kind of new for ASMP to do an exhibit of this type?
I definitely say it's something that an exhibition of this caliber and on this subject matter is definitely new, at least for the New York chapter. I can't speak on behalf for other chapters. I'll definitely say for New York. But again, it's really important that I mention, Joe Lombardo, who was really the driving force of getting the show up and started, because while the idea was there between myself and Gabby, it needed to be funded, right? So money is very important. So I think, the idea was there for quite some time, to be quite frank with you. We had this idea and we were sitting on it for nearly a little over a year. We had to really gain funding to really get things started and, find a location. That was something that was a roadblock for us. And, finding not only a location, but one that sort of had the same belief system that we had when it applied to this exhibition. And so that really did take took some time. That's what I'll say. It took some time. And so once we were able to have, the funding, we were really able to then move forward once we knew that there was money to back this project. So yeah, that's what I'll say. Liam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to underscore that as an organization, something that was really a big part of this was being willing to have those difficult conversations with the leadership in our organization and with members. And I know that in 2020, I don't know if this is going to come out right, but what I'm trying to say is so in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, so many organizations and people were compelled to make statements about equity and all this kind of stuff. And I can even remember, Harper, we put out an equity statement, and I remember having a conversation with you, Harper, where you were like, okay, thanks, but let's see. And what I love about Harper is, Harper's served on the board with us for a while, and she's always straight with me, as the president of the board. Harper's never pulled any punches. And, I was like, we're putting out this equity statement, yada, yada. And And she was like, look, that's great, write whatever you want. But, let's, put your money where your mouth is, basically. And I think that if I fairly characterize that, Harper.
No,
And
it's
did you
very
then?
accurate. It's very accurate. And like you said, there were so many corporations that sort of felt the need to quickly jump and speak, because if you remain silent, it's sort of, silence is also a form of communication. It's communicating something, right? And so I think that so many companies and, corporations and non-profits felt the need to really come out and quickly say something. Because if you didn't, people just were quick to say, well, this company didn't say anything. And, people were calling you out, and rightfully so. And so, I mean, I really wanted to be sure that if we were going to be an organization and I was to stand with this organization, that if we put this statement out, let's not just put it out because it's cute and it's trendy, because that's exactly what it boiled down to. It became trendy and you had to do it to save your business. And so I really appreciated that with the organization, with ASMP-NY, that it wasn't just, merely a statement. We really did create opportunities and figure out a way to give the platform to people of color.
It was an imperative that we look at, as an industry, the photography industry, that we look at our part that we play on all of these different levels in sustaining a system that, to put it mildly, like, it doesn't create opportunities for people of color, for young people, for people that don't come from the type of means that you generally need to come from in order to operate inside of this industry. It takes a lot of money to be a photographer, man. And we really took a look as an organization, the ASMP-NY, what's the part that we're playing here, and what does it look like for us to actually play the part of the gatekeeper in some places, and also what role do we play in making a difference for the issues that people face. And one of the things, we came to a lot of things. We had tons and tons of discussions. A lot of them were very difficult. And, one of the things that was important to me is that the initiatives that we created were led by people of color, and also something in general that's important to me as we create programming for ASMP-NY is that the programming is created by the community and for the communities that it's for. And to go a little bit broader, we have a fine art committee, and the fine art committee creates whatever programming that they want to create with regards to fine art. We don't have commercial photographers trying to tell the fine artists what they need, right? And when we were talking about how do we share the stories and give the platform to people of color, it was like, well, this needs to be an initiative that's led by people of color. And obviously Harper's the first person that came to my mind, given, as you can see, the depth of her thought and beautiful, amazing curation that her and Gabby brought together.
In order for any project to get funded or to move forward, the board as a whole has to vote on it. And so after, coming up, conceptualizing the entire exhibition, right? Then, we had to bring it to the board, and if they support it and believe that it's something that is going to, impact our community in a positive way, then we were able to move forward. So yeah, it's definitely, it was in steps. It had to be voted on, because anything that we do create, any sort of gathering, any event, exhibition, lecture, anything, it has to be voted on by the board.
I saw it in New York in the fall, and is there plans for the show to travel? I mean, what's going forward with this exhibit?
We're looking at 2 different cities at the moment. and, other places that are interested, again, because we just think it could contribute to, it can add something different to each city. And the feedback we got in New York, we think that we can achieve that and probably more in other cities that we're looking at. I mean, our hope is for this not to be a one-time shot thing, right? Because we were really... So, for example, Liam really took the mission seriously. And I believe, I hate to speak on behalf of other people, but I feel like all the other members as well, all the other board members, we really were searching for ways to really create opportunities for people of color and, not just let it be something that, okay, well, this is happening now, this is trendy, and this is what we're going to do, and then it's going to fall off. I think that, with this exhibition, it's only the beginning.
In 2020, the world sort of woke up to some realities about society. And these things don't get changed with one event. These don't get changed with one, although, my God, wouldn't it be wonderful if one exhibition could change everything like that? But it's not the case. This is... The world is the way the world is, and it's there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do with regards to equity. There's a lot of work to do with regards to inclusion in the photo industry. I think that there's ways that ASMP-New York can participate in that, and we're leaning into that because, first of all, it's the right thing to do. Second of all, it's the future of this industry. The reality is that we want this. We want exhibitions like this to go to multiple cities. We want to expand the Bridge program. We want to continue to create programming like this. Just like Harper mentioned, how amazing would it be for us to do exhibitions like this, driven by members, celebrating the things that members care about. Like our LGBTQ members, like. How amazing would it be to do these types of exhibitions? And I want to just bring it back to, like, this is all member-driven stuff. It's members creating things, and our board volunteering, and we need help. So, just speaking to, we do need folks to, bring us ideas, tell us what you want to see, tell us how, and come and support us. And, so speaking to our members, like we'd love to continue programming like this, and we do need support to do that because it is a totally volunteer-run organization and member-driven content and member-driven exhibitions like this one.
Get involved.
Yeah.
Okay, Liam Alexander and Harper Bella, thank you both so much for joining us today and telling us about all the ASMP goings on and shows and insights. Liam, if people would like to catch up with more of your work, where can they go to?
They can check out my website, liam-alexander.com, or find me on social media, Liam Alexander, and I'm a very easy person to find.
And again, all of the links will be on our show notes. Harper Bella, what about you? People want to catch up with your work. Where can they go to?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to keep in touch, and when I say if, I mean you do want to keep in touch. No, I'm kidding.
Attitude, yes.
You can go to harperbella.com. That's my website. Or, check me out on Instagram at harperbella.jpg. And you can also check us out at asmpnewyork.org and, look at upcoming events that are happening, past events that have happened, like this exhibition. You can go ahead and go to our website where we will be posting very soon the actual footage from the show. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us. And again, all of these links will be on the show notes. We strongly encourage our listeners to check it all out. There's some great work out there. If you'd like to know when new episodes of the B&H Photography Podcast go live, all you have to do is head on over to wherever you snag your favorite podcast and sign up. It's free. We charge you guys nothing. And we invite you to leave a comment while you're there. Comments are always appreciated. According to my visitors pass, my name is Alan Weitz. And on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.